Hi there. My name is Stan Holt. I'm the senior advisor with Partners for Impact here in North Carolina. And this is another in the series of little tutorials that I'm doing around logic models. These are little 5 to 7 minute training videos that help you build and use logic models for program planning and evaluation. So they're short snippets. As time goes on, they may get a little longer, but I really try to focus on a particular topic. And this one I want to talk a little bit about is the benefits of the logic model. And before I go on, I would just want to recommend three resources that I have found in my kind of career as a program designer, evaluator, funder, you name it. These are three key resources about logic models that you just are you can't go wrong with. There's the Kellogg Foundation has a logic model guide. The Center for Disease Control has a project program logic model page, and then the University of Wisconsin, their extension service has a nice whole section on logic models. One of the other resources that I have that's not kind of publicly available is the work that was done by United Way, probably the mid 1990s. And that they did good work, but it was pretty much a training that was restricted to United Ways. Just a quick reminder that a logic model is a graphic display of the connections between a program's activities and its intended outcomes. And in the previous videos, the previous tutorials, we learned that the logic models are made up of the things that you need, the inputs and the things that you do, the activities, which results in outputs, which creates outcomes, and then hopefully multiple outcomes. And scaling those outcomes will create kind of what I call community impact. So it's this linear way of thinking about your program from the very beginning as to what it needs, what you're going to do, what the results are going to be, and the overall change that it can create in your community. And one of the things you'll hear about logic models is that they're a series of if then statements. If we have these resources, then we can do this. If we complete this set of activities, then people will participate. If they participate, they will benefit. And then the more people experience that benefit, the greater the community benefits. So these if then statements become a way of thinking about your logic model. But what's important to remember is that there are two pieces to that logic model. Let me go back to that diagram. You've got your inputs and the activities over on the left-hand side, outputs, outcomes, and impact. What I will tell you is that we think about inputs and activities, those are things that we can control. Outputs, we might have a little say in, but the outcomes, when we think about it from the standpoint of this is about change that we see, it's not necessarily something that we can control. So when we think about our logic model, we think about it as our plan and our intended results. We have our plan, which is our inputs and activities, and then our intended results, which are the outputs, outcomes. And then when we have multiple outcomes, and those outcomes really do connect to what you're trying to change at the community level. So the last slide is probably where I want to spend a little big chunk of time here, and that is the advantages of it. Number one, it is probably one of the most helpful planning documents I've ever used. Number one, particularly if you're working with a group, it really creates a shared understanding of what your program is and where you're going to go. And as you're building your logic model and thinking about a particular program, maybe it's an environmental education program that you're trying to put together for middle schoolers. And as you start putting it together, you can actually you can start seeing things where there are gaps. Oh, we may have forgotten that we need to do um, what's a good example? Well, here might be something. Shift it a little bit. We may need incentives, or we may need to make sure that we have food for kids that are doing something after school, right? It also helps you identify the best practices. And it engages you in thinking about, okay, who else has done this kind of work? What are the best practices with that work? And how do I incorporate that into my program? And a logic model, then best practices is this is really similar. It says, there's these particular activities that will really impact this particular result, right? And I'm trying to think of a really good example. One thing that we all almost always helps is knowledge, right? If we have really good, solid information, say about nutrition associated with food, we can make changes in what we eat and maybe improve our health, right? So we can figure out what some of those leverage points are. That's one piece of that example. Another piece is, if we actually exercise and encourage people's exercising, that actually has a bigger impact. So it's beginning to really think about what are the things that you do to achieve the outcomes. It also helps you create the structure, right? So if you know that you have to deliver, health education seminars to 20 programs across the city in all the schools, it may help you define how many people you need to do that, right? So it really is a tool that can say, right, if we're going to do this much, we need to make sure we have this many staff. Or if we're going to distribute, if we're going to reach 15,000 folks with information about the transport system, we need to make sure we can print 15,000 things and figure out how to distribute 15,000 pieces of material. So it helps you structure your program. And then finally, it helps you to identify what pieces that you want to measure, the success and the evaluation process. The planning document, it does all this work, but it also then it really helps you improve your communication in two ways. Number one, it helps you articulate the so what, right? Many programs, it's easy, really. It's very easy for me to talk about. I've got staff that we get together. They run literacy programs. They reach 30 kids. Boom, and we're left with the question, so what? And then if we're doing the logic model, it makes us really spend time thinking about, okay, what we're really about is impacting literacy rates in our community. We need to look at this and say one of our pieces in that puzzle is making sure that adults have basic literacy skills, right? So it really helps you talk about those, what I would call intended results, in a really smart way. And I would argue that in a way that most individual donors and or foundations or funders want to hear. And the flip side is then it also helps you tell the results, right? If you know your reason and you know why you're doing what you're doing and you know what to measure, you can quickly say, we did this, and we measured this and saw this particular change in young people, for example. And then we can begin to even think about, we can step it up a little bit, and we could say, it cost us $1 million to make sure that we've got 100 kids that are safely housed in shelter at night, right? Okay, so do we need more? Maybe, maybe not. That's a different question. But it helps you begin to really think about what you're investing and the results that you're getting. And the results are actual changes in people, not just counts of what people do. So those are some of the real big advantages. And I really would say that it's, in all honesty, it's helped me write grant proposals in a profound way. So really take advantage of this tool as you go forward. So once again, I want to say thanks for listening to this. My name's Stan Holt, and you can reach me at partnersforimpact.com.